Welcome to Brain Strength. This is the series where this average jabroni decides to do a couple athletic things every now and then, while also teaching you a little bit about sports psych along the way. I'm your host, RJ Lynch, mental performance consultant with my master's in sports psychology. Let's get on the road here. In this episode of Brain Strength, we're going to be focusing on the idea of burnout and overtraining. To start off, to understand what we're getting at here, how to treat things, how to work with things, we have to understand what the difference is, because there are differences between burnout and overtraining. In athletic burnout, it's more of that extreme physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. It's very hard to return from, and we see severe decreases in performance and motivation. This is the point where I just usually say, burnout is you're broken, you're done, you're finished. Everything is just kaput and you are over it.
Don't want to be your stupid quarterback. I quit.
When you're overtrained, you're training beyond the ability to recover, which leads to decreased performance and other symptoms along the way. The symptoms are usually less severe kinds found in burnout from physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion and so on. If you continue to be in a state of overtraining, eventually you hit that burnout because you're not recovering, your mind's not feeling good, emotionally you're just tired all the time. And it's very important to start treating overtraining as it comes so that you don't reach burnout, and making sure that it's not a prolonged thing, because there are certain times where we have to overreach in training, from strength training to any sport training, because it helps us bounce back and hit that spot better, but we can't be there all the time. The way I like to relate training and make things more visually clear is picture a bridge under construction. If with this bridge you have some supports, you have some foundations there that are helping you go on, and now you have to slowly add pieces to reach from one bank to the next. In training, we're trying to get about as close as we can to that bridge, to the edge of the bridge without falling off, but also close enough that we can attach the next piece. Because if we're all the way at the start of the bridge, we can't get the one that's halfway down. And overtraining is that spot where sometimes you have to just tiptoe that edge real close so that you can put on a couple pieces there. Burnout is you're too far and you fall into the water, or you fall into the abyss that the bridge is over and you crash. There really is no coming back to that until the search team pulls you out 10 years later. That's the best way I can kind of describe the difference, and I can describe training and how this can look. So what are the symptoms? What does this stuff look like? Knowing once again that overtraining and burnout can look similar, just burnouts could be more severe and caused by overtraining happening for a long period of time. So you're chronically fatigued, you're tired all the time. You get up in the morning after a good 8-10 hours of sleep and you're still just, you're just done. Your performances are suffering. If you're overtraining, it means your body isn't taking enough time to recover. Thus, if it's not recovered, you can't do certain things during competition. In addition, you become injured more. If all your body's resources are going towards survival mode, it's not going to rebuild mode. It's not going to thriving mode. And you're just becoming more injured. You're becoming more susceptible to things because your body is trying to take those resources elsewhere. And funny enough, the other issue is there's usually a loss of appetite. Then there's the emotional and the mental side of things. When you're tired, when you're exhausted, you're less motivated. The more you beat down on your body, the more anxious and depressed it can become. You start feeling helpless and frustrated. When you're injured more often or your performances suffer, what happens? You become frustrated at that because you're like, I'm putting in all this training, I'm doing all this stuff. Why am I not getting results? Why am I doing more and more and getting less and less? You just become frustrated and angry at yourself. There's usually decreased concentration. You're fatigued, so you're thinking about how much you want to go to bed, how much you want to rest. You're not eating, so your brain starts going haywire because it's like, I don't got the things necessary to keep me here and I don't want to be here. I'm tired here. So what causes it? Excessive training, Just doing more and more and more eventually gets you to the spot where your body is like, this is all I got. And then if you couple that with low recovery, if you're not sleepy enough, then you can't come back. Monotony. If you're doing the same thing every day, every week for months at a time, your brain just gets to the spot where it's like, I'm bored. I don't like this. Especially if you're not someone that's in love with the process of training. You just sit there like, let me go home. Let's do something else. I'm bored. Are we there yet?
Are we there yet?
You little...
Stress and pressure. The more external forces or internal ones are coming in on your brain, putting stress and pressure on you, saying you need to do this, this, or this, the more your body is just trying to fight that off. Think of it like 1v20. Your brain and body is getting punched by excessive training. Then it's not recovering a lot. It's beating you down. You're bored of what you're doing. Other people are coming in and telling you need to perform better, so you're getting these pressures put on you. Then you have high expectations of yourself, and it's just like people being on the same person, kicking them while they're down, and eventually you just shut down and you're like, I want to walk off the bridge's edge. I don't even want to try to put it together anymore. So going back to these causes, I want to relate back to that bridge example for each one. So you're building a bridge, you're putting it together, you're building something. If you're building that bridge for 16-hour days, 8 days in a row, eventually you're just getting to the point where it's like each piece of the bridge is heavier. Everything gets there. If you're not recovering in that time, you're barely eating, your muscles are just depleting. You're looking like you came straight out of a work camp, just nothing but bones. At the same time, if you're doing the same thing every day, like the assembly line, your brain first shuts off because it kind of just knows and lets your body act, and then it kind of returns on again, like, this is still what we're doing? God damn, I want to get out of here. If you have stresses and pressures, like, this bridge has to be done in X amount of time, you have to be here and here, it has to be perfect, it has to be fit for a king, for presidents, the high expectations of like, this better look better than the Golden Gate Bridge, and you're like, this is my first bridge. How am I supposed to make it better than that? It gets to you, and you get to a point where the edge of it just looks more and more tempting, like, man, if I just fall, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to deal with the pressures. I don't have to deal with the training, the boredom. I get to do something else. So what would I do, or how do I help people that are going through burnout, overtraining? Well, if they get to the point of burnout, there's usually not a lot we can do. If you're burned out, you're just so done that sometimes it takes a week of nothing. Sometimes it takes 10 years of nothingness to get a little bit of that spark back of like, yeah, I want to do this again. So if you hit the point of burnout, unfortunately, there might not be a back. At that point, you've probably also just lost your love of whatever you do, and you're done. You've jumped off that bridge. There's no pulling you back up. We have to go searching for you. But if you're still dealing with the overtraining, how can we deal with that? Start off realistic and periodized goals. You have these high expectations, you're stressed, have pressure on you. Can we take some of that? Can we readjust how we're looking at this building of the bridge? Can we get this section done here? And if you're not able to get that much of a section done in a week, well, let's readjust the goal a little bit less so you can hit it, feel accomplished. Same thing in training. Can we set goals that are at a point where maybe we're not dropping our 100 time by half a second, but can we drop it by a tenth of a second, a couple hundredths of a second? Can we start there and just do that over a longer period of time instead of thinking like, I need to be here in 6 months? Relaxation and mindfulness drills. If I have someone who's overtraining, who's doing things, who's very stressed, I'm going to have them sit back and just breathe, just relax. Just say, okay, you're not going to die if you don't hit this. You're not going to lose everything if you fail. Just relax, become more mindful, become more present. Find ways to let monotony become flow. Because you know you're able to attack that task. You know you're confident. Can you go from this is boring to time is just flying. I'm in that spot where my brain's just off and I don't have to think about anything else. Time management work. So with excessive training, low recovery, a lot of times what happens here, the reason we get low recovery is because we don't think we have the time for it. So I'll have people break down the schedule, block off hours of, all right, where's our relaxation hour? All right, you better take that hour every day to recover, to relax, and do nothing. Next up, I have them work with their coaches, their other social support, and figure out how to communicate to lessen stresses, lessen pressure. Coaches, support, athletes who are doing stuff on your own, how can you prevent yourself becoming overtrained? How can you prevent your athletes from getting overtrained? Add in some variance. Every now and then, throw in a cross-training day. Throw in some film days. Throw in some days that are just like, yeah, we're going to do something different. Instead of this, we're going to play a game for the warm-up. We're going to add in some variety. Next up, do periodic testing and assessments. Big one I like to use, for example, is vertical jump testing. So for those of you who don't know, when you do a vertical jump, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One is generally a lot more muscularly driven. The other is more nervous system driven, more driven by other factors. So this is a tip, some things I learned from past coaches I worked with, that if I do a jump where my hands are on my hips, I just pause, jump, that's going to be more driven by how my muscle systems are going. How tired are my muscles? How fresh are they? How strong are they? Because I'm getting to a point where the only thing that can fire here is the muscular system. However, when I do things like swing, jump, in that regard, what I'm doing now is I'm engaging more of the nervous system, how my body is reacting to the motions, how the fluidity of things is. So by finding ways, whether it's jump mats or other vertex, things like that, where you can test these vertical jumps periodically, what you're able to do is monitor how their system's going. As if you go from having a 25-inch vertical from that pause jump to 19 all of a sudden, unless you really just screwed up the test, something's probably tired and exhausted. Maybe you should back off how much you beat down on the muscles that day, how much you go after. If your counter movement jump here goes down from 30 to 27, we'll say, all of a sudden 26, it tells you like, the nervous system's a bit shot today. Even though physically I can push through some things, something else is just not firing correctly. I should probably take it easy, or I should cut reps. I should not do as much. Another one is sprint training. If you're working with athletes and they're doing 40s, 30s, flying 10s, those kind of things, if all of a sudden there's this big drop during the workout, they should probably cut off, especially if they do it twice in a row. If they come in and they're extremely off, something's off there. So just finding those different ways of how to include something that you can also make a competition and a fun thing to do into a way to monitor your athletes. Next up is scheduled and unscheduled rest. So I call it scheduled and unscheduled in both ways of meaning that. So scheduled as in we have these days off every week, or we're always going to do this. And also schedule as means as on our rest days, we schedule to do yoga. We schedule this or that we're planning. For unscheduled rest days, I'm talking about days that maybe you did some vertical jump testing before practice. You did your warm-up, did that. Everybody or 90% of them are just blah. You can tell by their faces, they're just blah. So you say, you know what? No practice today. And now from there, you have a couple different options. You can say, hey, we're just going to say, get me X amount of free throws shots on your own day, but we're doing no official practice. That can work. I still get scared that unscheduled rest with scheduled activity, whereas unscheduled rest day with unscheduled activity is where you say, like, we're not having any more practice today. Do whatever you want today. And also on your scheduled rest days, you can have unscheduled activity. A lot of coaches fall into this trap where they're like, we need to schedule rest days, but we also have to have required things like we have to schedule in the 30-minute mindfulness practice because mindfulness is a recovery thing they can do. Yoga is a thing they can do to help them recover. Well, sometimes you're still stressing them then. You're still telling them you have to be here by this time at this point for this long. So even though you're scheduling the rest, it's not fully rested. Sometimes your athletes are just like, we're going to take Wednesday off. Okay, what do we need to do today, coach? Whatever you want to do. Do your homework, go have a date with your partner, go do something. I don't care. Just take the day off, do no physical activity or none that requires anything from a muscular point of view, and just rest. If you get more of those scheduled days with unscheduled activity, it's just going to let your athletes have a little bit more autonomy to the fact of like, hey, I can do whatever I want to. I can do yoga or I can do mindfulness, which now because it's not pushed by coach actually feels like rest instead of a practice they have to be at. And then finally, open communication. Talk with your athletes, see where they're at. Ask them, how are you doing? If they say sucky, maybe we need some rest. So that's all I really have for today. If there was anything I said today that offends you, I hope you can forgive me. If you say anything in the comments that offends me, no, I'll probably forgive you. So until next time, brain strength out.